bald cypress. They're very similar to each other. Both of them are great for bonsai. They're okay for bonsai, huh? They are a deciduous conifer. So they drop their leaves in the wintertime. You can see most of them here have the leaves drop. Mine are just starting to turn colors. Yeah, it has to be kind of cold before they start turning colors, and then they'll drop their leaves. This chart here was written by Vaughn Banting, which, if anybody's been around the bonsai for a long time, Vaughn is kind of the godfather of bald cypress. He's taught Gary Marchal, Guy Guidry, David DeGroot. Those are all people that have learned from him. And most of what I know is from articles from them, and then about, 17 years of collecting them myself. So this is what Vaughn Banting wrote for the different types of bald cypress, or different types of cypress. The formal upright, and then the flat top. The formal upright is more the triangle shaped type trees. That's actually the juvenile variety. The older cypress trees are the flat top variety, where they have a reverse. They don't have the triangle down; they have the triangle up. So that's actually the more mature look to it. Me personally, I like the other style better. But if you look at some of the flat top bonsai, they are pretty cool. I've yet to successfully make one. Now, there are also breakdowns into different ones where the formal upright has a gradual taper to it. Now, I am not an artist, so please bear with me. So that's kind of the gradual tapered one. You see that all the time. This is the ones we want. Where it's not very tall and the base is even wider. That's the variance that we would look for ideally. Let's see, that's getting close to one there, the real nice wide base. Then we get into the flat tops, and then now the flat tops are kind of styled a little bit differently than you would a normal tree. So they're going more in this direction, where it's the reverse. The triangle is in a different direction. This is hard to do. I've yet to make a real nice one. Mike, have you made a good flat top?
I did have one for a while, and then something happened to it and died.
Yeah. Styling wise though, it's kind of hard to get it that way.
It's hard to get that effect.
Yeah. It's in this magazine. Well, let me go ahead and get it here. This is an old one, number 33, back from 1994. Okay, so here's one of the more upright styles. And then this is Vaughn's very famous flat top, this guy right here. Yeah, it's been, I mean, if you know anything about Vaughn, that's a very famous tree. It's tough to get it to look like that, but that's what an old bald cypress is going to look like, is this.
It actually depends on how it was growing when it was a younger tree. If they grow in forests, they tend to have,
yeah, they're more straight up. If they're out by themselves.
Growing out by itself, it will grow into the regular formal upright style.
And then there's another style where instead of here, all of a sudden it'll do this crazy thing like this, but it's still more up like that. And I've seen trees like that out in nature.
Yeah.
Why it does that, I've got no clue. But all of a sudden yeah, this crazy wiggle, and then it's back to a normal tree. Straight on the bottom, crazy wiggle, and then the top. So this is a variant that Vaughn described. So most of the ones we do are more me personally, I like the formal upright ones. I'm still trying flat tops, but I haven't got that one down yet. Most of them are collected. Most of the best ones, I should say, are collected. Mother Nature, God makes them better than we can. You can make some pretty decent ones from stock material. My very first one was from about a 5-foot tall tree one of my friends gave me, and the trunk was only about that big. And then you make a cut. So this is a common way if you have a tree. It goes up here, and then the tree is all up into here. So this is too tall. Remember the 6-to-1 ratio? 6, if it's one of this way, 6 is how tall it should be. There's a nice taper. Well, if this is too much, what you're going to do is cut the whole tree off right about there. And then what will happen is you'll get a bunch of shoots start coming off of here. And what you want to do is bring it down just to one shoot. And then this one shoot's going to keep going, keep going, keep going. And as it does, it gets thicker. And so you let that grow until the thickness of this is half the thickness of that. Understand? Then you make a cut again. Now, however long that is, that might be 6, 7, 8 feet, just depends. The bigger the round that you start with, the taller that's got to be. But you got to let it grow straight until it reaches that thickness. If not, when you cut it off, the relative growth here is slower than the relative growth here, and you're going to get reverse taper. So you just wasted however many years that you were growing that thing up there. So like this thing, you just keep letting it grow until it gets to the right size, and then you cut it. If you cut it too soon, well, we could do it there. If you cut it too soon, it's going to change the growth pattern, then it messes up your taper. You want taper from one section to the next section to the next section. So over a period of 2 or 3 times, you could develop a fairly nice taper. And you get a little movement. You make your cut on one side, and you make your cut on the other side. Now you have a little bit of movement as you go up the tree. That's a common clip and grow technique, but for something, out of a pot like this, you could cut it as low as here if you wanted a short, wide, fat tree. Some folks like tall trees. Everybody's a little different. If you want tall, you can just let it grow. But I kind of like those short, wide trees, and I like taper going from one section to the next section to the next section. Another thing to remember is the interval of thickness. This next interval of thickness should be a little shorter. Each time it goes up, it should get a little smaller. Same thing with the branches that are going out, it should get a little smaller as you go out to the edges. All right, so that's what you can do with nursery stock. If you're going out collecting, need a shovel, need a saw, and need some gloves. And this is what I go out collecting with. I like these saws because you can kind of get down in there. The fold-out ones are not as strong, so I don't like these. Ace Hardware is the only place I can find these that are all the way, the big ones like that. Got to have one of those, or some kind of power tool, some kind of saw. You got to have one of those. I like this shovel because it's got a sharp edge here. I can sand it down like a knife, and it's very heavy. You can dig it in, and I can put my entire weight on it and without worrying about bending. Actually, Ron, if people know Ron, he's 3 1/4, so he can put his entire weight on it, lean back on it, and it won't break. So it's also a pry bar as well. So when you go out in the woods, what you look for is something that has a nice flare to it. Because you're not going to keep the top part of a tree. I mean, that's Rarely are you gonna take a tree out of the woods and keep all of it. So what you're gonna do is find a tree that has a nice flared, something that has a nice flared base to it. Something that comes out there and there's some fissures in there. So this tree probably is gonna be 20 feet tall. So now you're gonna cut it back down to there, say maybe 3 feet tall. Guy Guidry showed me a simple way. He said, take your hands and follow the line up. You know how big your tree's supposed to be. Simple. So you know kind of where you want to go. So your cut will change depending on how tall you are. Generally, you want 3 different levels of taper going up. So you'd want another level here, and then another level here of another taper. Okay?
Would you cut that?
What's that?
When you go to collect it, it's 20 feet tall, how, short do you cut it?
See that saw that I just talked about?
But I mean, would you cut it at like the 3 feet, or would you cut it?
I usually cut it longer until I take it home and expose the roots, and then when you know how big the roots are, then you know where you're gonna go with the tree. Always, you start at the roots of any tree that you're dealing with. The roots tell you where to go at the top. If you don't get the roots right, the top's gonna look crappy. And unfortunately, with collected trees, many times the roots don't always line up to where the top of the tree might be. So a lot of times you cut the top of the tree off, keep the bottom, and then grow your new top. When you're growing in the top, don't worry about the side branches yet. You might think about maybe one primary branch, one back branch, but not anything more than that. When you make your cut the first time, then you can start working on your side branches. But if you let those extra branches grow, you're gonna get reverse taper up around the cut. And when you get reverse taper, it's hard to work your way back from that. When you find a good tree, you're gonna make a perimeter cut. I usually go around either with the saw or with the shovel. If the trunk's this big, then I'll make a cut maybe that big. And first with that, this thing will go through roots that are about that big. Yeah, if you sharpen it up, it's just like a knife. And then if it's not, if I can't go through it, then we take the knife. Ideally, we try to bend it a little bit. If it's too big, then sometimes we'll actually hook a strap around it to come along or to a truck and just bend it a little bit, and you can get under the roots and cut it a little bit more, and little by little it'll pop itself out. They don't have a lot of deep tap roots, but there's gonna be some down there, and you gotta get up under there and then cut them out. When you collect it, try to keep as much of the mud and stuff on it, because you want to keep it wet. You do not want to dry out. Cypress are one that you cannot overwater. Can't overwater them, can you? You can underwater them. What's that?
You can put them sitting.
Yeah, when I collect stuff, I put them right in a bucket of water. They stay in water. I've had some 3 or 4 years in water. If they're stressed out, put them in water. That'll help recover them. And when they recover or repot, I put them in water for at least a few months, and usually through the summer. Yes?
About the water, it can get stagnant, do you refresh it?
I try to,
Like
yeah.
every week or once a month, or any thoughts on that?
When I run around, I'll pour it out and then let it fill up again.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Just hit it with a hose instead and just